Hello and welcome to the Launch Your Life podcast, the only mindset podcast that provides weekly actionable insights for lasting happiness and change for high-achieving professionals who are ready to bounce back from burnout. I'm your host, Dr. G. Today we're talking to Sally Garozzo. Sally is a rapid transformational therapist, host of the Menopause Mindset podcast, and founder of the Sleep Superpower Academy. She's passionate about innovative approaches to health and well-being, which support the midlife/menopause transition. This podcast is not just about menopause, so for the men who are listening, don't turn it off. During the podcast, we talk about how subconscious programming drives our lives, our behavior, and deconstructing the past, why it's so hard to create lasting change, and why she takes a 5-minute dip into the English winter sea a few times every week. She also gives us some practical tips on creating a sustainable sleep routine, so stay to the end. Now, at the end of this episode, visit launchyourlifepodcast.com where you can find the show notes plus the links to the books and resources mentioned in the episode. Now, every day at 8:30 a.m. Eastern, I post on LinkedIn. Follow me there and just search Dr. Michelle Gordon to get actionable life-launching tips. And when you're ready to create a change in your life, just reach out on LinkedIn or by email, drg@drgordon.me. I'm happy to talk to you to find out if you're a fit for one of our life-changing programs. Thanks for launching your life with me. Now let's get to Sally. Sally, welcome to the Launch Your Life podcast. So happy to have you here.
Oh, thank you.
And why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got into what you're doing now?
Yeah, so I'm a Rapid Transformational Therapist, which is a hypnotherapist. And I noticed a link between the people who were coming to see me for hypnotherapy and the whole midlife crisis, the whole midlife transition. And that's what I was going through as well as I was training to be a hypnotherapist in 2017. And I noticed that, there was this link between this whole midlife crisis and wanting to change everything about you, really, wanting to change your life, wanting to change your health, your mindset, your relationships, your finances. And so I recognised that there was something in this menopause thing. It hadn't quite landed with me that what I was going through was the perimenopause. And so when I saw a functional medicine practitioner, got some Dutch tests done and we had a conversation and I was like, oh my God, this is perimenopause. I think I was about 42 and it wasn't on my radar. It wasn't on any of my doctor's radar as well. So it was nothing that I was particularly thinking about. Then I just decided to do a course in perimenopause and menopause. It was called Peri to Postmenopausal Wellbeing. It's a UK company that we have here. And oh my God, light bulbs just went on everywhere. I was like, this is really happening. And I just noticed this correlation between the need to look after yourself more and the whole sort of self-care thing that we need to kind of dial up during menopause, and how hard that is for some people, especially when we're high performers or, we like to work or, we're just sort of enmeshed in this cultural narrative of growth. And actually what we needed to do was just sort of press the pause button and just figure out what exactly is going on under the surface. So I work with people on their subconscious programming from the past. So I look at their childhood, what happened to them in their childhood, what did they learn about themselves and about the world around them from what happened to them, really. So yeah, we go quite deep. But I'm also a singing teacher as well, which people find interesting.
All right. What's your range?
Oh gosh. Well, I can get up to, probably not these days, but top C. Sometimes, okay. I think my highest note was a G.
So are you a soprano or are you a
well, it is weird because I have like a split range. I don't have a particularly well mixed voice, which is what everyone seems to want. But I can sing very high soprano, but I can also sing quite low. My speaking voice is quite low. You probably hear it.
Yeah.
I think that's the testosterone.
So I studied classical voice in college, and I was a coloratura soprano way back in the day. So you gave us a lot of things to talk about here, and it sounds like you made some sort of a pivot back in 2017.
Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about a midlife pivot, because I think that's really important for anyone who's listening to this podcast and is interested in making a pivot.
Yeah, definitely. Well, for me, it was really, I just felt so bad, but I blamed my partner, who is my now husband, and everything that I thought that was going wrong with me, I thought was to do with the relationship, and I thought it was to do with him and how awful he was and how he never cleaned up and how he never, did particularly well with his career. And so we split up. And then we got back together, and then we split up again. During the second split up, I had like a massive identity crisis of my nervous system. I stopped sleeping. Everything just kind of broke down. I didn't know who I was anymore. And thankfully we got back together again. But that wasn't until I'd had to really unpick my behaviours, actually, and had to do a lot of work on myself in terms of, it feels a bit weird to say this, but I was on the narcissistic spectrum, and I was an only child. I was very pampered as a child. I was spoiled. I didn't have to earn love particularly. Everything was given to me, which was nice. But you don't really learn how to communicate effectively if you can just get what you want all of the time. And so actually, it wasn't until my early 40s that I started to grow up into an adult, and realise that you had to negotiate and you had to have effective communication, and you couldn't just spit your dummy out in a rage when you didn't get what you wanted,
My dad used to say that puberty should be raised to the age of 40. And, I think that menopause is an opportunity. I mean, I had an existential crisis in menopause as well. And I pivoted away from surgery and onto, building this online business, mostly because I was burned out and I was disillusioned, and doctors enter the medical field because we're altruistic and we want to help people. And then we kind of get spit up, kind of chewed and spit out into this corporate machine, and we lose our altruism. And I was pretty much done with that. And for me, it was like menopause hit, and I was like, oh, how can I get some help? And I couldn't find any. And that's how come we have the menopause movement as part of our offerings. But in terms of your mindset, it sounds like the just like you said, you help people with their subconscious programming. Mm-hmm. And it sounds like all the beliefs that you created from, being an only child and always getting your way and being loved, because you were an only child, those crept into your life. And I think it's so important that we talk about the fact that, everything that we think is true happens, these beliefs come in between the ages of, say, when we're born all the way up to age 10, but usually they're cemented by the age 7. And that unless we start to radically examine our beliefs, our lives will not change.
Absolutely. Couldn't agree more. We have to do that deconstruction. If we don't do that deconstruction, we'll just be blaming the outside world or just blaming ourselves, because actually when you look back at why it happened, then you can forgive yourself. And that's part of the treatment that I do, is saying, it's not your fault. This anxiety that you have, this hypervigilance, this inability to relax, or whatever issue it is that they're coming, could be procrastination, could be fear of rejection, could be money blocks. It all has a reason. It all has a root. It stems from something. I'm still having therapy today, and I enjoy having therapy because I find it fascinating when I make a link to something. And then, so at the moment, I've been having these odd, intrusive thoughts, and it doesn't worry me too much because I know it's I don't pathologize it particularly. But when I dove into it with my therapist yesterday, we were talking about how my dad sort of, did something similar when he was younger and bringing me up. And we were like, oh, wow, isn't that interesting that actually, I don't mind admitting it. These intrusive thoughts were like not doing very nice things to animals. And like they would just pop in. I'd be like, oh, where's that come from? That's horrible. And it would make me really, really sad.
Sure, yeah.
And then you go down the rabbit hole if you're not careful.
Am I a psychopath? What's going on?
Yeah, exactly. Am I? I don't know if I can swear on this podcast.
You can do whatever you want.
Oh, good. Am I king mental? Am I?
Yeah, sure.
A psychopath. So.
Well, what do you guys say over there? Round the bend?
Yeah. Am I round the bend? That's it. Yeah, that's an old one actually, but I like it. And when we had a look at the way my dad was treated, my dad wasn't treated very nicely by his mum. He was, as a baby, he was thrown against the wall. And as a child, he used to sort of swing cats around, and he used to tell us all this stuff as well. And of course, that as a child, that sort of infiltrates your mind. So then when I was having a bit of high anxiety, no wonder this sort of stuff comes in, and I've got a new dog, and then you kind of worry about what you're going to do, but obviously you're not going to do it. We have a certain level of sanity, but it does make you, when you deconstruct, when you do the work, when you look back, everything becomes so much clearer. And I think that's what I love about this ongoing work. And for me, it never stops. I don't know if I'll ever stop having therapy, really. I do enjoy it. It's a nice process. It's comforting to get that support as well.
I mean, I think that, if you want to grow, and anyone who's listening to a mindset podcast is somebody who wants to grow. Yeah. We have to be in this state of constantly questioning what we believe to be true. Yeah. For me, it took me a long time to realize that. I mean, I had to become a doctor. I had to become a doctor because when I was 5 years old, I realized that was the only way I was going to make money. And so that was the only way I was able to make money. And, I'm still undoing that programming, right? And so, I've talked about it on the podcast multiple times. I don't want to go through it again, but the thing that I found to be so fascinating was that programming ran my life. I didn't want to really be a doctor. I wanted to be a psychologist. Yeah. And it threw me into medical school. I didn't love medical school. It was just like this means to an end. And so I spent the whole time being really focused, and even, throughout my divorce and custody, and we had I had to move out of the state, and my ex-husband didn't want me to move out of the state, and there was a big custody hearing and stuff. And the doctor, the lawyer from my ex-husband says, why are you in medical school? And I said, I need to provide a means of living for my son and me. And I just kept saying that because that was my only focus. I was just so focused. And so I had this belief that when I was done, when I finished my surgical residency, when I started my practice, that I was going to be happy. It was all going to come together and everything was going to be awesome. And I got there and I was like, what now? And so there's this such an opportunity for us when we think that something's going to give us a happiness to start looking at, why am I not happy now in this moment? Yeah. It's
so poignant, because I think that I read a book, Emily Fletcher, she's a meditation teacher, and she says that we all have this I'll be happy when syndrome. And I've had that, and sometimes I still have it, but for the most part I can say I am satisfied. And I think there's this quote from Esther Hicks as well, who says, satisfied with what is, but eager for more. And I love that balance.
Yeah. I mean, it's really one thing we have to really, in order to grow, we have to be comfortable with the fact that things happen as they're supposed to, right? And giving up this sense of control can be so hard for us, right? because we tend to think that we actually have control, but we live in a dream world, and what I love is the fact that nothing is set in stone. We can change it. The only thing that I think is real is gravity. And it's always going to suck at 9.8 meters per second squared. That's just how it works, right? But other than that, I mean, everything else is open to interpretation, and we can change the story in an instant as long as we're willing to look at things from a different perspective.
Yeah, absolutely. I think so. And I think part of that is being brave enough to understanding that there is a choice, that you have a choice, and that you're not kind of stuck and you're not limited to what your life circumstances presented you. Because I think if you are limited, that would be a very bleak existence. And I don't think that life is bleak. I think there is, when you look at some of these beautiful documentaries and you see how life evolves and you see how the penguins survive and how nature survives, and it's incredible, like the life force that we have within us, that desire to grow and evolve, I think is strong. But I think we battle with that against our survival instinct, which always wants to keep us safe.
Yeah.
And that's where the anxiety comes, when it's like the anxiety happens when the accelerator and the brake are being pushed at the same time. There's the real desire to want to change and grow and improve and move life forward, but the brake is being slammed on, which is that voice that says, you can't do this. You don't have the money to do this. Who are you to think you can be a doctor or a psychologist or a menopause practitioner? And so when you've got that push me, pull you situation going on internally, that conflict builds and builds and builds. It produces anxiety. You don't know who you are. You have this identity crisis. You don't have any clarity. You get palpitations, and then it will manifest physically in the body as well. Mm-hmm. So a part of the work that I do, and I'm sure this is the work that you do as well, it's untangling all of it really, so that we get clarity, but also the confidence to understand that this over here, this anxiety, is the survival instinct. It's designed to protect you, to keep you safe, so that you don't go jumping off a cliff. It doesn't want you to do that. But on the one hand, there's this sort of Elon Musk person within you that wants to go to Mars and wants to build a rocket and take off. And so what voice are you going to listen to?
Yeah, no, that's really good, because sometimes, I wonder, like, if I only had 6 months to live, right, what would I do? And I mean, without question, I would be traveling. But what if it was like, if there were no limits, right? And so that's something I always think about, like, what limits am I placing? Because the limits that we have in our lives are only things that we put on ourselves because of some belief. Yeah. And, I used to think that I couldn't be on camera, and I sucked at it at first. And so it's just, we have to be willing to suck at things and to fail. And as a doctor, that was really hard for me especially when I started a business and realized that a business is a series of failures that you just practice until you find something that works. You just got to keep on, and the sooner you fail, the better it is. Yeah. And so when you redefine failure to mean, this is a lesson, this is something that I can, keep moving toward. I mean, I think this could be really applied to weight loss, right? Why is it so hard to lose weight? And the reason it's so hard to lose weight is because we don't change our state of being. We don't adopt the habits that somebody who has the weight that we want to, that they have, right? We don't go to bed at night. We don't drink enough water. We don't move our bodies, and we don't eat enough protein. Yeah. And those 4 things, if you just get a good night's sleep, if you just drink more water, if you just move your bodies and you eat more protein, you're going to lose some weight. Yeah. Because protein keeps you full and it's hard to turn into fat. And so, not to put a lot on the weight loss side of things, but it's truly what we get our habits. Yeah. And when we want something new in our lives, we have to change our habits. And not only that, we have to visualize where we're going.
Yeah.
And we have to believe that we can do it, because if we don't believe, we're not going to get there.
Oh my God, you are so right. You're so right. You have to see yourself doing it first.
Yeah.
Like, you have to create that vision in your mind, because that vision, it sends a message to the rest of your body, and it can turn on the hunger, it can turn off the hunger or the desire. But I just started, because I live right by the sea here, and I've just, well, I say just started. I started it last year, doing the cold water exposure.
Oh, Wim Hof?
The Wim Hof stuff, yeah.
Okay. Oh. You actually get into the sea?
Well, yes, I do. And I started in February last year.
Congratulations.
Thank you. And I mean, that's something that every fibre of your being does not want you to do. Every part of you is kicking and screaming as you walk up to that water's edge, and it's January and the sun's just come up, you know, it's 8:30 in the morning, and you're with your comrades and you're all totally resistant. Yeah. So what is it that tells you to get into that water? You know, it's that part of you, it's that Elon Musk part of you, that driver, that part of you that wants to change this habit. And that's so powerful, but you have to, the way that you get into the water is so interesting. You can either panic as you go in and resist, or you can relax as you go in. Yeah. And if you panic, you're going to have a bad time and you're going to come straight out. But one of the things that I learned, and this has had a massive knock-on effect in other areas of my life, is to relax into the pain. Because that's, I mean, I don't know if you've ever exposed yourself to cold water. I'm sure some of your listeners will have. But it's very painful. And the first time I experienced it, I was not prepared for the level of pain that it was. I thought it would be a bit chilly, but it's actually physical pain. You know, it's like a real numbing, and then your armpits burn and your lower back like goes into this sort of freeze, and the base of your neck goes into freeze. So it's a lot of pain that you're having to deal with. The payoff's amazing, and I think that's the thing that motivates you to do it, is the payoff. So, you know, when we're talking about weight loss and not eating those sugary sweet things that you so want to eat, it's like telling yourself, well, how do I want to pay? How do I want to pay in an hour's time? Do I want to pay in guilt? Do I want to pay in remorse, in regret, in feeling sluggish? Or do I want to pay in self-mastery? Do I want to pay in feeling, you know, accomplished and strong, and like I'm in control of myself? And that's going to feed into that motivation, which is going to make me want to do it even more and even more and even more. So I think it's about, in those moments of difficulty, when you're faced with that challenge, knowing what you want and why you want it and why you're doing it, and then relax into the pain. It's like when we're having like a blood sugar crash, or we want, maybe not a blood sugar crash, because you should eat something if you're having a blood sugar crash, but if you're feeling like you want to eat to avoid boredom, it's leaning into that discomfort of boredom. Like, what's that boredom trying to tell you? Or what's that loneliness actually saying?
Yeah, no, that's so good, because, you know, one of the ways, I mean, I think we can, there are things that happen in our lives that become habitual, and breaking the habits is almost like breaking an addiction, right? And so we have to start with our thoughts. We have to then change our behavior, and we have to remember when those thoughts come, because I want to go and do this, I have to like redirect myself, right? Now, I'm not talking about the same sort of addiction, physical addiction that comes with, say, you know, opioid abuse, because that's a really hard one to undo, because it actually changes the whole chemistry of your brain, which is why it's so hard to quit. Yeah. But when it comes to like habitual behaviors, let's say you've gotten yourself into something toxic, maybe a toxic relationship, or maybe a codependent kind of thing, and you know you got to end it, but you don't want to because it feels so good. Yeah. You know, but you know you're not going to grow. That kind of stuff. That's what I'm talking about. You know, or even sometimes our relationship with food, where it's ice cream at night or it's alcohol, right?
Yeah.
And with not talking about a physical addiction to alcohol, but I'm just talking about, that 7 p.m. glass of wine that just, and through the pandemic, alcohol abuse has really gone up.
Yeah.
And we got to think about what the trade-off is. And the way I quit drinking was that I realized that alcohol, while in the moment I feel really relaxed and it's fun and I love it, the huge payoff is lack of sleep and feeling really shitty the next day, regardless of how much I drink. And so I was like, and I drank actually, we went to Maine, which is a state up north here in America. We went to Maine for Christmas. My brother came and I was drinking, I brought this great big, like 4 or 5 or 6 liter bottle of wine. We drank that. And then we had New Year's Eve. I drank whiskey or something. And that was it. And I said, I'm done. And I haven't had a drink since. And it isn't an addiction thing, but I just want to feel better.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And so just getting over that. And so we got to really, our job is to really pay attention to the things that draw us, especially the things that draw us back to toxic type behaviors, and try and find the alternative.
Yeah, absolutely. I think another thing as well is that stress can become very addictive, and that's a really hard one to break, because the thing that we need to do to stop the stress, like, I don't know, go and have a little sauna or go and have a bath, or meditate, we can be really resistant to those things, because it's taking us away from the thing that is very familiar. And I think there's a lot of that with addictions as well. It's habitually, the mind loves what is familiar, and so it just takes you back to the familiarity, even if you don't want to do it anymore. I'd gotten into a bit of a pickle a few months ago with eating on the sofa in the evening, and I was like, I don't actually enjoy this, but I am doing it and I can't stop because it's so familiar. And it actually took being a bit sick, being a bit ill with something to break that pattern. And again, that's why illness can actually be quite useful, because it's like a pattern interrupter. Yeah. God forbid we get ill on purpose, or we get ill a lot, because it's not very good. But it can be a good pattern interrupter when we need something, when we can't quite muster the strength ourselves to do it. But, when we have support groups, or when we're in programs like your program, I think that collective support can be super helpful for accountability, for motivation, and just new ideas and new perspectives that keep you on the straight and narrow, keep you on the path.
Yeah, no, that's really good. And I wanted to say that what have you seen as the benefits of the cold water, going into the cold water?
It's really that I know I can do hard things. That's really been it. Like, physiologically, I don't think I get that much from it, if I'm honest. I get more out of having a cold shower in the morning, but that gives me lots of energy and I feel alive. When I do the cold water dipping, I call it, because we don't actually swim, we just dunk. I'm actually very, very cold afterwards, and shivering, and I have to go home and warm up slowly and eat a hot meal, and then have a hot shower, and I feel very, very tired afterwards. So I actually can't see, like, particularly the physical benefits from doing that, but the mental resilience is where it's at for me. It's the ability to get in, withstand that level of pain for 5 minutes until you've completely gone numb. And knowing that.
Well, is that something you said? Would you have done that alone?
No, don't think so.
Yeah, so that's a really good point about accountability, because if you tell we often will keep our promises to other people, but break our promises to ourselves. And so one way to make sure that we get things done that we really want to get done is to be accountable to another person about it. Yeah. And so you're not going to leave your friends and on the C by themselves, for them to come back and ridicule you because you didn't show up and you're a wuss, right? Yeah. But the other thing I want to tell you, some of the benefits that happen when you do cold therapy is that it does, it decreases inflammation in your body to the point that it can really help. It can really help with chronic illnesses if you have like an arthritis or something like that. And the other thing is I think it increases metabolism for several hours afterwards. So those are a couple of benefits of cold water therapy.
Yeah, I've heard something to do with brown.
Top of my head.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
I heard someone, a biohacker, say something that it helps to metabolize brown fat.
Well, I think so it increases brown fat. Brown fat is the fat that we have for, if I remember now, I don't quote me because I'm not sure, but it's the fat that we have for insulation, and the fat the metabolic fat that we have from overeating is not brown fat. Okay. It's yellow fat.
Okay, so the conversion it probably helps to convert it.
So it helps to. Yeah, it helps to add that, and that's a healthier type fat. I don't know if cold water therapy. You probably, if you read Wim Hof's book, you'll probably hear it out. But you probably find it out. But I'm pretty sure that it can help to decrease visceral fat as well. Visceral fat is the fat around the organs that we don't see, or the omentum, which is this fatty layer of tissue that overlies our intestines, and the job of the omentum is to kind of root out anything that gets out of the gut.
I see.
For whatever reason.
That would make sense. And does it have an effect on the vascular system as well?
Well, so what's going to happen when you get that cold is everything's going to constrict, and it's going to make sure that you get blood to your brain so you don't pass out. So what happens? So in terms of inflammation, I think that's one of the functions of the inflammation, but now I'm just remembering medical stuff, and so if you think about cold therapy, what it does is it decreases the blood flow to the area. So when you go in, up to your neck, what's happening is your heartbeat is going to go down, and it's going to try to pump more blood up to your brain.
I see. That would make sense. Yeah. So it's good.
So that's why you go numb. That's why you go numb.
Yeah. Oh, it's so interesting. Yeah. And that's why you probably feel that sense of whoosh in your head.
So I wanted to ask you, so let's just switch gears for a second, and let's talk a little bit about setting boundaries and saying no.
Ooh. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, it's a good idea at menopause. Midlife.
It's a good idea any time in your life.
Quite frankly, any time in your life. But at midlife, it tends to come up because I think having lots of estrogen enables us to say yes to everything. And we get used to saying yes to everything in our 20s and 30s, don't we? And going out when we really don't want to go out, but we can push ourselves in our 20s and 30s. We can do with not sleeping very much, particularly, and that's not very good for us, but we can cope much better, I think. And so we push ourselves much more, and then that becomes a habit. But also not being able to say no comes from that thing of really wanting to keep everyone happy. And that comes from usually a fear of rejection. I can't say no because I'm terrified of being rejected by this person. So then we have to look at, well, why are you terrified of being rejected? Where's that come from? Of course, there are sort of survival instincts as well. Like if we go around pissing people off, we're not going to have a tribe. And our primal brain thinks we need to have a tribe in order to survive. It doesn't quite realise that we've moved on from caveman days and we can get everything delivered via Amazon these days. We don't actually need a tribe to survive. We do need it for our mental health and our emotional well-being. But so I've lost my train of thought there. But what was I saying?
So we're talking about setting boundaries and saying no and rejection.
Yes.
And how they're all connected. Yes.
And so, we need to trace back and find out why. Why are you worried about saying no? A lot of the clients that I see have real issues with like being nice. I mean, it's a very British thing anyway, just sort of being very nice and very amicable, and we don't want to upset the apple cart. We won't even complain if something is off in a restaurant. You know, we'll moan about it to our partner, but when the waiter comes along, oh no, everything's fine, everything's okay. So you have to get used to, I think it's a confidence thing as well, you know, just standing up for what you want for yourself, and understanding that actually what you need for you as somebody in their midlife is probably going to be good for the other person as well. So I think if you're saying yes to things like projects, for example, that come in that aren't really in line with your values anymore, but you say yes to them anyway, and then you can't do it last minute, that's going to really piss the other person off. So by just sort of slowing down and assessing whether this thing is actually going to be right for you or not, just taking a little bit of time out to do a value measure and decide yes or no, and go back to the person early, I think that will earn you actually some respect in the long run. I think that's the way we need to look at boundaries, is it's not letting somebody down, it's actually effective communication, which is so important for harmonious relationships, and you know, it will get you respect in the long run.
Well, I think that's true. I think also that it's so important for us to realize that saying no is really saying yes to ourselves.
Yeah.
And that will free us up to actually do the things that are very important in our lives. As women who have taken care of families for the most part growing up, you know, as they grew up, or a partner, making sure the partner had if you didn't have children, but your partner, you know, had a career or whatever, I think what happens in midlife is we get to a point where we're just like, well, you know, the kids are gone, and, you know, the partner has this great job, whatever. And now it's like, well, what about me? And it's our time. And I think it's really important that we take that time, take a look at what we're doing and say, how, especially if you're a high performer, how can I make this better? How can I get a little bit better? And especially when it comes to boundaries, man, I tell you, people walk all over women. And the reason we walk all over women, you know, people walk all over women is because we let it. Yeah. We let them. Yeah. And we let them because it's a societal expectation, and it's taught to us when we're children. Yeah. And we're taught that girls are supposed to clean up and boys are supposed to, you know, hit girls when they like them. Right. and so then, you know, we grow up with women who are subservient and men who abuse women. And so I think it's just really important that when we get to midlife, if we haven't had a good idea about how to set boundaries, that we start to learn. And there's a great book just called Boundaries that, you know, it's a good way to just get started with how to say no to people.
Yeah, I think I know that book. Find Peace, Set Boundaries, Find Peace. Is that the one?
I don't know. It's got a pencil on the front.
Oh, okay. No, my one's got squares on the front. Okay.
Yeah. I think. Yeah. I might be thinking of something else, but it's a boundaries book. So let's talk about sleep.
Okay.
How do you get a better night's sleep other than, you know, dousing yourself in the cold sea for 5 minutes? Did you do that every day?
No, I take a cold shower most days.
Okay.
Yeah, which I like. But so it's really, for me, because insomnia was probably my worst menopausal symptom. So it's something that I really had to learn how to do, because you can only go without sleep for, you know, probably 2 days, 3 days if you're lucky, without it really starting to affect you mentally, you know, the brain fog, the memory loss, everything. You just feel awful if you've not slept. Mm-hmm. So I had to learn, and I had to learn fast. The main thing for me was not worrying about not sleeping. So this is the paradox, the oxymoron. Yeah. The more you don't sleep, the more you worry about not sleeping. The more you worry about not sleeping, the more you don't sleep.
Right on.
Right. So here we're screwed. We're in a
that whole rumination cycle in the brain.
Yeah, exactly. So what was I going to say? Yeah, so stop worrying about sleep. And it used to hit me about 5 o'clock in the evening, and I'd start that sinking feeling of, oh my God, is tonight going to be the night that I don't sleep? Even if I had a run of good sleep, I would start to worry. And so I used to just bat those thoughts away with a cricket bat in my mind. I would just imagine them, or like water down a plug hole, or just say to, or rationalize with myself, this is just those intrusive thoughts again, basically, and recognize that my body did have an innate capability to sleep. And what I really needed to do was increase my sleep drive. And so what I was doing was not exercising for quite a long period of time, because I thought I couldn't, because I was so burnt out through not sleeping. But actually I needed to do something, even if it was just a little, going for a walk, or a bit of yoga, or just some really light resistance weight, just to increase that sleep drive. So exercise played a key part in my ability to start sleeping again. I needed to really knacker myself out physically, so that my body would then take over at night time. When you're that exhausted physically, it's a physical exhaustion that I needed to create in my body, not the mental exhaustion. Because I think mental exhaustion can keep you awake. It's like, so that's something.
Everybody says exercise, right? You want to lose weight, you have to exercise. If you want, eat less, move more. I mean, it's such bullshit. Because really, if you want to lose weight, you have to change your habits, and your habits start with what you're putting in your mouth. And it doesn't matter about, that's why we have here at the Menopause Movement, we have a 28-day Middle Belly Challenge that you can buy that has weekly coaching and things like that. And it's so important that we start with just simple habits, and it's the only weight loss challenge that says you don't have to exercise if you don't want to. Because at the end of the day, it's not about exercise. Why do I exercise? I exercise because I don't want to go senile. I want to increase the blood flow to my brain. I want to make sure that I don't get some sort of brain problem as I age. And again, I want to be able to sleep at night. Now, my relationship with exercise goes up and down. I'll run 20 miles in a week, one month, and every week for a month, and then I'll I'll ride a bike or whatever, and then I just get burned out, and all I want to do is just walk. And that's okay. I mean, if I'm burned out, I have to listen to my body, I have to listen to my brain, and I told myself I was going to do something every day this year. And so mostly it's elliptical, and I don't care. Because at the end of the day, I just want to do something. I just want to remind people that we exercise to keep our brains fit. We don't exercise because it's a punishment for eating, or, and obviously we want our bodies to look a certain way, and that's when, you can shape your body with weights and that sort of thing. But man, if you're not sleeping, start an exercise program, and even if it's just walking.
I couldn't agree more with everything that you've said there. I think exercise should be, you should exercise to balance your hormones, regulate your nervous system, discharge emotional energy first. The weight loss for me has got nothing to do with it.
So was there anything else you were hoping to share that we didn't get to?
I think in terms of sleep, another really important factor is bedtime routine. It's so important. And actually understanding that the whole 8 hours a night thing is a bit of a myth. We actually need 5 sleep cycles, which works out at 7.5 hours. Sometimes you can have an extra sleep cycle if you're really sleep deprived. Sometimes, it can be 4 sleep cycles if you're a certain personality type, especially like musicians and late night people that are artists tend to stay up later. They can survive on 4 sleep cycles. So it's really calculates, doing some maths, working out your chronotype, the amount of sleep cycles you need. Then you allow 20 minutes for falling asleep. So that takes you up to 7 hours and 50 minutes. So then you go to bed at that time minus the time you want to wake up. So you do a little calculation. So I go to bed every night at 10:10 and I wake up at 6 a.m. And I don't need an alarm clock. It all happens all by itself. 90 minutes before 10:10, I start my power down hour, although it's an hour and a half, which involves having a shower, taking a salt bath, doing some breathing exercises, writing a list out for the next day, tidying up, getting my bits out for the next day. And that's quite structured. So for me, that structure is so important. Making sure that I don't overwork, making sure that I set boundaries, say no, and things like that. It's just incredibly important to set boundaries and find peace.
So 2 hours of TikTok before bed is probably not the best idea.
Not really, not unless you're on holiday. But even then, I like to stick to a routine.
Yeah, no, that's good. So sleep routine is really important.
Yeah.
Thanks for that. Where can people find you?
So my website's probably the best place, sallygarozzo.com. I'm very active on Instagram as well. I do lots of stories and reels, and I try to post content that's very informative, not just sort of me dancing around doing stuff, although there are some, because I've started dancing as well recently, which is good for the whole mind-body connection.
Sure, absolutely.
Yeah, so
I love it.
I've got a sleep course as well, which I do, called the Sleep Superpower Academy. So I've turned all of my problems into solutions.
Well, that's always the best way to get something going, is to turn a problem into a solution. Sally, thanks so much for joining the podcast today. I really have had a great time with you.
Thanks for having me.